I see an acceleration of this. Like I'm a student of history. I'm a bit of a history buff from my early days. And to be frank, as far as I can dig up in my mind, all those books I've read on history, ancient Rome, I remember reading about the Mongol Empire, how savage those times were. But it seems to me we're entering a new phase of, for those who believe in the Bible, as we do, of evil. What has prompted this? Someone pushed a button not long ago, and it sort of has taken off, especially, I would say, maybe in the last 6-7 years. Why do you think that is, and who's pushing the buttons here?
That's a really great question, Carlos. I guess there are multi prongs to the answer. Number one, of course, the big one is we have this day called the internet and social media. And it's a wonderful platform for truth and for error. The Bible tells us that particularly Satan is the prince of the power of the air. And that's his particular domain. And through the air of communication and through modern communications, via the internet in particular and modern media, there is the capacity, if it gets into the wrong hands, to create a massive, exponential increase in all that is anti-God and anti-Christ. So I have no doubt personally that the modern media is becoming more and more controlled by big tech and by various sinister groups which have an agenda to destroy and to disrupt our society, particularly in the West. It seems to me that America is the particular focus of this attack at the moment. I know there's a lot of talk about foreign governments hacking the American systems for your oil pipelines and your companies and all the rest of it. So there's the tool and the availability there to do this and to make the exponential increase, more in our faces. I think coinciding with that, there's been certainly science itself, which, as we all know, began as a wonderful Christian endeavor, because it was Christians primarily who took the Bible view that the world itself is God's creation, and it's there to display his glory and to be studied so that we may draw nearer and appreciate his wisdom and his power and his wonderful attributes more and more. But as science has gone on, more and more it's become secular, it's become anti-God, and any mention, for example, today of things like intelligent design or differentiation, as I mentioned before, which is really the theological term that's the equivalent of the scientific expression of functional specificity. And so I think modern science has become very anti-God, and it's got some massive proponents out there today, very popular, for example, Richard Dawkins and Hitchens and all of this mob, very evangelical in their non-God belief or their atheistic belief, and they've used science as the vehicle to promote it. I think within the church also, going back, part of this I'll mention in my article tomorrow, it began in the late 1800s, particularly through the form critics. It arose in Germany, and where the Bible itself was believed to have come to us from very disparate authors and writers. And so the Bible itself began to come under threat from within the church, was cut up and consigned to a patchwork of disparate and even contradictory myths and stories within itself. So the church lost its faith also in the harmony of Scripture as well as the harmony of God's creation.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're exactly right. This situation today reminds me of a quote by one of the presidents here, Thomas Jefferson, who said, "A democracy is nothing more than mob rule, where 51% of the people may take away the rights of the other 49. But it seems to me, Greg, that today it's like the 1 or 3% taking away the rights of the majority when it comes to this topic of gender identity, transgender rights, and so on. What do you think of that?
Yes, well, it's the old story that the whole approach, for example, of the Marxist doctrine is that you don't listen to the other side. You scream at them, you yell them down, you talk them down, you don't enter into meaningful dialogue. Because if it was simply on the level of idea versus idea, if it was simply on the level of let my worldview stack up against your opposing worldview, then all would be well, which has been the case up until fairly recently. But now it's simply a matter of being shouted down, and the noisy few dominate. Of course, there's been this insidious sort of approach, particularly I think in America, if I follow the current events properly, where through your education system and the universities in particular, there's been this growing undercover sort of work where Marxist ideals have been taught and promoted, where today there are many professors, as you're probably aware, in America, who are upholding the traditional viewpoints of the Judeo-Christian ethic system, who are being silenced, who are being disenfranchised, who are being sacked, for saying things that are different to the party line. So it's sinister, it's in your face, it's very verbal now and very aggressive. And I think that, as Christians, our little voices in there are simply being shouted down.